Good evening, wherever you are. I am Yeremias Fade. You can call me Jamie. And with me is Coach Juan Bautista Propato in Australia. So at this interview, we will talking about the Australian football development, youth development in Australia. So, Coach, glad to have you here with me tonight in this interview. Just go to the questions. So the first thing I want to ask is, what are the stages of Australian football development from youth to seniors? And is it any difference between men and women in the youth development overall?
Yeah, thank you for your time and for reaching out, Jamie. So the if we could call it the pathway here in Australia, and the structure is so the little kids, they play mini roos. So mini roos is pretty much small side games. So they start with 4v4 in 5 and 6 years old with no goalies, and then the 8 and 9 they go into a 7v7 format, and then they go 7v7 with goalies, and then they go 9v9, and then in general, and the under 13 age group is a FIFA route, so it's pretty much the 11-a-side game, and then after that you have in some bigger states than Western Australia, you have a youth league and an under 21 league. Here, pretty much the older ones is the under 17, and then go into the senior football. And also, what's happened in the bigger centers or bigger city like Perth, the clubs. So it is two pillars, if we want to call it. So one is the community, and the other one is more advanced. So the community clubs, there will be most of the time the smaller clubs. They want to have players and team for recreational purpose, and then on the more advanced pathway, that for example one of the clubs is Perth Glory, that they play in the A-League, the first team, and then Sorrento and Florida, other clubs that are in that advanced pathway, and they have teams in the NPL. So the NPL is the National Premier League, that is a similar structure all around Australia. And to have a team in the NPL league in men's or women's, you have to have feeder teams, so teams feed into that. So most of the club will have an under 13, 15, 17 NPL teams. And then, for example, down here in the Southwest, we have one club in that level, that is Southwest Phoenix. So what's happened, they all start in that NPL, and then they play one round, and then if you finish top 4, depends on the number of teams, you go into NPL 1, and then they play like Division 1, then you go into Division 2 or into Division 3. So they split into whatever it is. So what they're always looking for research is playing best with best, and like for like, so having similar competition and competitive games all season.
Okay, is it the same for both men and women, or is there any kind of difference?
So we could say that it is a similar structure. I would say the biggest difference, especially down here, is that because the women's game is growing a lot, but still, for example, clubs like Perth Glory or other bigger clubs don't have an NPL junior team, female team. So what's happened is the federation, that the one, for example, I work, Football West, they have a NTC, so a National Talent Center program. And what it's doing is having the best girls playing with the best girls. It kind of recreating what's happened on the clubs and that NPL in the junior and youth. And then that NTC team that is representative of Football West play in the league. And they have a younger NTC, an under 16 and under 23 league. So they play part of the NPL league with the women's. So the under 16, that, like I said before, they will be junior/youth. They're already competing against women's, not the NPL, so the top level, the second one, the one below, and then the under 23 NTC will be on the top league in Perth. So that will be the difference when in bigger states like New South Wales, that the biggest city is Sydney. There are many clubs like Melbourne, Sydney SC, or in Victoria, Melbourne, where clubs are creating that password, starting to create that password. So rather than Victoria Football Association having an NTC team, will be the clubs themselves providing a pathway for the girls to play and develop.
Okay, that's really great. And next questions. Beside of you mentioned before, there are two pillars: the community and the advanced stage. Is there any crucial maybe pillars in the Australian youth development nowadays?
Well, there are so there are other programs that kind of try to create better players, and also, of course, helping our coaches. So, for example, for the little kids, is a program called Kick It, or used to be Mini Roos, that is pretty much having one more session a week of football. So the next stage for all the kids is the SAP, so the Skill Acquisition Program, that normally is 9 to 12 years old. And then after that will be the TSP, that is the Talent Support Program, that is 13, 14, 15, and 16. So kind of those programs are allowing players and coaches to have more training and develop. And, like in football nations like Argentina, Brazil, Germany, England, the players at the age of 10 or 11, they will be training 3 or 4 times a week. So normally here the clubs will train once and maybe twice. So if they do the TSP and the training center, plus club football, that will give you 4 contacts plus again, will be 5. So they will be in a similar, I mean, you don't have the numbers that maybe other countries, but they will be providing opportunity for those players to develop.
Okay. And the next question, how far is the progress of the development recent days in both men and women's?
Well, it's always difficult to, my friend Juan in Argentina always say that football is, maybe other sport too, but sometimes it's unfair because you create a lot of chances and there is a crossbar and rather go in, go out, and then you get out, you get eliminated, and then maybe they fire the coach, and then if that ball went in, and then you're on the winning side, then everyone was happy about it. So, but definitely, and especially, this is our second year in COVID-19, although Australia was not so affected by this, but like we were talking before off the records, many or all the Australian football teams in the A-League, for example, they didn't travel to Asia, or last year they pulled out on the Asia Cup. The Socceroos didn't go to the Copa America this year. They're supposed to be going. Apparently, they're qualifying and starting again soon. So there were a lot of restrictions and limitations to play against other teams. But answering your question, at the Olympics, it was difficult because I'm Argentinian, but I also work and live in Australia. But the men's, the Olyroos have a really good game against Argentina. They beat them 2-0. But they lost against Spain on the next game. Spain was runners-up. They lost the finals against Brazil. And then on the last game, they lost against Egypt, and they couldn't qualify to the next round. But definitely was the midfield and players coming from the bench, from the young Oli Roos. You could see the talent, the good players coming through. So it is a system that is working, and many times you need this kind of competition to show how your players are doing. And then on the female side, the Matildas, that is an older team anyway than the men's. The men's have restrictions; they have to be under 23. They were really close to be in the final. Unfortunately, they lost against Sweden, but a goal was disallowed on the first half. So they finished fourth, and then I think it will be nice to see an under-20 World Cup, men's and women's as well, to see where Australia it is for all the development that happened over the last 5 years.
I really agree with you. So Australian football, both men and women, are so fantastic in the Olympics. Even the women's almost get the bronze, but they felt in the last game. That will be a good future for the Australian football actually. And how do you shape the junior competition between men and women's in youth development? Any specific, like the pyramid of the competition, or maybe the pathways to grow player development in Australia?
I think the challenge for Australia is the distance. So it's a massive country, one of the biggest countries in the world. And also is not many people living in Australia as well, so over 25 million. So the distance between, like for example, regional areas, we are not so far away from Perth. We are 2.5 hours, but Kimberley and other areas are 20 hours, 2 days drive. So the massive distance for the regional areas to compete and challenge the metro areas, that's a challenge. Other areas like New South Wales, Queensland, Brisbane, they are closer to each other as well, Melbourne and Sydney. So it's easier for them to have the numbers and to compete against each other. But definitely the competition, the challenge is always about the coaches understanding that junior football is not about winning and losing, that is about winning and development. So the players need to learn how to play, rotate positions, learn, do mistakes. So it's it doesn't make sense, or no point for teams to win, to make the best team, and I play over center back, you over play number 9, we win every game, whatever, but we never really learn anything. We just learn how to win. So I think that's a challenge for all the associations, for teaching the coaches and having people working with the coaches to understand that the bigger picture is, like your question before, is how the Matildas are doing at the World Cup, how the Socceroos are doing at the World Cup or at the Olympics or at the under 20. So are we developing the players in the right way? Are we not developing the right? Are we challenge the bigger nations? Can we compete against the top countries? And again, especially the women's, because that is similar competition to the Women's World Cup with the men's. It's an under 20, and many countries didn't take all the best players. It's a good reflection of where the female game is and the male game is as well. So the challenge is the coaching education, coaches understanding the role, the competition structure to allow players to develop, and then also the competition and the pathway to allow players when they are potentially, I don't know, too good for the under 17 league, be playing senior football, or when they are not ready, have them more time in junior football. So, for example, in Argentina, the structure is, so in novena, octava, séptima, so it's 9, 8, 7, 6, 5th, 4th, 3rd, and then is the reserve and the first team. And it's not by age, it's more by ability. So normally the 9 is 10 and 11, so the young ones. But for example, in the quinta, the quinta division, you could be 13, or you could be 14, or you could be 15, and you could be playing on the first team on the reserve, like players like Pablo Amaro or Alier Ortega, with 15, 16 years old, because they can see that they are ready, or Agüero playing for Independiente when he was only 15. So a structure that is, yes, have a structure, but also you need to allow players to develop, and if they are ready for first division, you need to have coaches that when Agüero play the first time, the coach say to him, go and enjoy yourself. I saw you playing in Reserva, go and enjoy yourself. That's what he said, and then Agüero went and enjoyed himself, and less than a year, and then he was sold to England. So I think having the right people allow players to develop and and succeed.
Okay. Talking about the regional areas, yeah, which region in Australia that have a strong, the strongest football development?
I need to be careful what I'm saying, but definitely New South Wales, Sydney, and Melbourne, Victoria. They've been for many years. For example, Melbourne Victory, Sydney FC, winning A leagues, the UW League as well, winning. They have the population as well. So I think they are a bit ahead of, especially Tasmania, Northern Territory, Western Australia, for the location, for the population, for the immigration they have. So many Europeans, many Italians, many Greeks, English, of course, but it's a multicultural city, Western Australia too. But I think they've been developing football for many, many years. So when in the past we went to national tournaments with the futsal, definitely Melbourne and Sydney, you could see that they were doing the right things. They have a lot of players, they have good coaches. And I think Western Australia with the COVID-19 and the lockdown, because we were not affected so much, thankfully, we're doing great work, potentially catching up with other states of Australia. So I won't be surprised if when hopefully everything goes back to normal, Western Australia will be in a really good position to compete with New South Wales and Victoria.
Okay, so in your perspective as a coach, what are the plus minus, or maybe the good thing and the disadvantages on the ongoing Australian football development at the moment, the youth development, I mean?
Well, definitely one that is difficult one is the distance between Australia and the more developed football nations. I mean, to travel to Argentina, for example, or South America is over 18, 20 hours. To travel to Europe is around the same time. And so it is expensive and time consuming to travel. That's why Australia, after 2006 World Cup qualifying against Uruguay, they used to be part of Oceania. they moved to Asia to be in a more competitive federation. So they went to Asia, then they won the Asia Cup when it was played here in Australia. So definitely they are trying to do the right thing. I think New Zealand should do the same, to be honest. They should move to Asia. But of course, the cost for them to move and play against in Asia, but the long term will be beneficial. So I think that's a good thing that Australia did, competing with better countries and nations. Well, unfortunately, they didn't go ahead to go to the Copa America and play against Argentina, Brazil, Uruguay, Chile, Colombia. So I think that's a good idea as well. And then, yeah, having other sports, like for example, here in Western Australia, Aussie rules, and for women's netball in Queensland, rugby league. So other sports that in junior football is the #1 sport in Australia in every state up to age of 14, 15. But after that, football is 4th, 5th sport. So it's always hard to compete in terms of a sponsorship and money coming into the sport. When, for example, here, a lot of money going to Aussie rules, so it's easy for them, easy to say in a term, easy to join, have marquee players and pay more money because they have more money coming from the top to the grassroots level or to the clubs. So I would say that's the disadvantage, and the advantage of being more competitive, focus more on coaching education, showing Asia, try to be in other or get invited to international tournaments like Copa America. I think is a move on the right direction.
Okay, so yeah, as you mentioned, the Australian the football in Australia, the soccer is less popular than other sport. In your opinion, what kind of strategy to grow the popularity of the football? Yeah, both between men and women in the country.
Well, I guess the thing about football that, well, like I said before, here is the #1 sport in juniors. Football is a really easy game to play. It's a great way to make friends. Well, in my case, to travel countries and meet new people. So for the kids, it's a great opportunity. Also, there are opportunities to get a scholarship in USA or in other countries, potentially get part-time contracts in other countries as well. But I guess the main thing is to promote football, to promote the sport, that the kids love the sport, the kids understand that it's the #1 sport in the world. To be part of that is amazing. So anyone with a ball made of, we used to play with paper balls and put a tape around because the teacher would take the ball away, but so no one could take your football away. So that love for the game, play with the ball. You can play anywhere. You can play with the dog. You can play against the wall. You can play on the beach. You can play indoor. You can play outdoor. So I think it's that promotion, that education with the coaches to so the kids enjoy the game, winning or losing. Doesn't matter really on the younger age of development. So when he's senior, then yes, it's the performance phase, but to have good coaches to allow the kids to enjoy the game, that's, I think, a key factor of growing the game, because many times they talk about growing, but you're growing every year, but at the same you're growing, you're getting 200 new players, you are losing 200 players, so you are not really growing. So growing will be to have better coaches, to keep the players, and then next year have 200 players, but you only lost, I don't know, 80 players, so you are growing on numbers. So I think we'll be around there, and of course, publicity and the kids relate to the sport and to those figures, like Sam Kerr at the moment playing in Chelsea, one of the best or top 3 players in the world. Tim Cahill in a moment playing for Australia in Everton. I don't know top 3, but top 20 best players in the world. So having representative in other countries and in the football, in most important leagues, I think it's always important also for your sport to say, Maradona is Argentine, Messi is Argentine, Pelé is Brazilian, Neymar is Brazilian, so Ronaldinho Brazilian, and we could carry on, but people identify your country with a player that was successful, that was a great player. I think also will allow the country, for example, now with Sam Kerr, to grow that profile of, you say, oh, Australia football, oh, yeah, I know that player, so people could relate to those kind of players.
Yeah, really great, because Sam Kerr is like a symbol of the rise of Australian women's football nowadays. Even the international community recognize the talent of Sam Kerr. And talking about women's football, I want to ask how far the impact of the Olympics' impressive performance for Matildas and 2023 World Cup hosts for the enthusiasm of Australian women's football.
Yeah, I think the momentum keep building for a while already before. So apparently the Matildas before the Olympics, they are the most popular sporting team in Australia, female. The number one, the most popular. They are really good on social media and Instagram and promoting. So I think to have the World Cup here in 2 years, will be playing Perth, and Sam Kerr is originally from Perth as well. It is massive, so the interest and more players want to play, and again that exposure to see them. In the semi-final, unfortunately they missed out on the bronze against USA. We need to remember too that USA won the last 2 World Cups. They have one of the strongest league in the world. Sweden won the World Cup before. So it's not that Australia lost against teams that were not really strong. So they were, and Canada was semi-finalists. They were in finals of the Olympics as well. So they were up there with the best. It's not that they lost against weak teams. So I know people like to judge teams and performance, but I mean, I don't know if Argentina lose against France and Brazil. Well, France won the last World Cup and Brazil is Brazil. So the same with the Matilda. So I think it's a great moment for women and for football in Australia, because it's the FIFA World Cup, and it's a great moment for everyone. For example, here in Western Australia, Football West, with the help of the state government and other partners, is going to grow and build. It's already a work in progress. The home of football in Perth, so it's a place where there will be teams training during the World Cup, and then that legacy program will be, when the World Cup finish, will be kind of the home of Football West and the home of football for Western Australia, where tournaments will be held and international teams will come over. So I think here and other cities will do similar things. On top of that, too, the Olympics are coming to Brisbane. So it is a lot of good things going on. Apparently, Australia also want to organize the men's World Cup, the 2030 or 34. So I think once you set it up, your country to host Olympics, that Australia did it before, and the World Cup, Australia is going to do it now. I think it's a great platform for the country to host other tournaments to keep building that profile.
Okay. Yeah, as you mentioned before, yeah, Australia have built a special program, the Legacy 23, to be the Australian women's football to face the Women's World Cup and afterwards. So my question is, how how the effective of the Legacy program so far for the women's football development in the country?
So, well, I guess so. The question is how much will affect that legacy program the future of football in Australia? Well, I guess I could have the the magic ball and see the future, but definitely I think it's same like I said before with the competition sport or the other sports that are competing with football. When the biggest tournament and that tournament is coming to your country, it's not getting bigger than that. So, and of course, if Australia make it into the semi-finals, that they never did it at the World Cup, at the Women's World Cup, or the men's either, I think also will be really good for the sport. But I think the legacy program and programs to allow leaders to be created and leaders to build and help inspire kids to play sports, inspire kids to play football. So I think there are many things that they are positive by having or hosting a World Cup, having a program that would allow, like they're talking about, for example, players from the Matilda kind of being the face of clubs or the face of states. So I don't know, Sam Kerr, for example, could be kind of the ambassador, or she already is Western Australia, and then Ali Camperton for Sydney and other players for Melbourne, and so kind of relate those players and those characters back to those communities or back to the state, and then having the country supporting that team and the sport, and then without thinking, you just engaging with the community, not just for now, but for the long term. And I think that's why it's so important always to do all the hard work of engaging with the community, because the community is the future of the sport.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's yeah, great strategy from the Federation of Australia. And yeah, about your career, how was your experience to working with FIFA? Like, what were your roles, and what did you do in FIFA? And yeah, how was the experience? Your story in the organization.
Well, in 2014 to 15 and 16, I was the National Women's League head coach for Waipop in the National Women's League. On my second year in 2015, the Under-20 FIFA World Cup was hosted in New Zealand, and one of the venues was Hamilton. So I was invited by New Zealand Football, and of course by my association, Waipop, to be part of the technical group. So to do technical studies about the games playing Hamilton. So pretty much what we're doing was analyzing from where the shots were taken. And then we have like a sheet with all mark zones. I think I have it here somewhere. with marked zones, and then the pitch was divided into 16, and then we have to take the statistic of from where they score. Then also was about shots on target, shot off target, minutes, and then so there was a group phase, and then the quarterfinals, and then the finals were played in Auckland, semis Wellington in Auckland. So yeah, it was I mean, sometimes when you ask a lot, oh yeah, I would do it, but then with the time, it was something amazing to be on that corporate box analyzing the games, and then when the under 20 FIFA report, technical report was released, to be part of that study. Yeah, I'm really proud, and then hopefully I will get the opportunity to be part of again. I don't know when, but yeah, definitely was a great opportunity.
Yeah, about the under 20 World Cup in New Zealand, did you work only in Hamilton or in the other cities on every matches in the tournament?
No, well, because I mean, New Zealand is not so big like Australia, but it still will be a big distance. Auckland was not too far away, so we could drive to Auckland. So pretty much I was doing the technical study of one of the main venues, that was Hamilton, Waikato. So I was part of that one, and then I was then invited to be on the final when I was in Auckland. I did go to watch Argentina Wellington, but I was not part of the study group in Wellington. But yeah, it was an interesting World Cup. There were a lot of interesting data, and a few countries that no one expected to do well at the under 20. They did. It was a young Portugal team doing really well. Unfortunately, they lost against Brazil on penalties, and that team pretty much was similar without Cristiano Ronaldo. That the team that won the Euros a few years later. So that Brazilian team, there was similarities with the one that won the Olympics. So the Argentinian team, unfortunately, didn't do so well. They didn't get out of the group stage. But yeah, and Australia, I think, didn't do so well. New Zealand went to the next round, so for the first time ever. So yeah, there were a few interesting scores and performance, but the study group was really beneficial, and also a different way to watch football. Just doing all the statistics and watching that, for example, in one of the games was only 6 shots on target. There were 15 shots, but only 5 on target. So pretty much a keeper only touched the ball 5 times. And you will expect that there were more shots on target, but when they are 2 top nations and they defend really well and they neutralize each other, they don't create so many chances. But I only kind of focused on that when I was doing the study and part of the report for the FIFA Under 20 World Cup.
Okay, yeah, that's a great tournament. Yeah, there are many young players. Yeah, in the tournament, young good players like Andreas Pereira, Julian Brand, and many more. Yeah, actually I saw some of the matches, and yeah, I'm lucky to see many young talents. And the last question is, as you mentioned, you were the first Argentinian to coach National Women's League in New Zealand. Yeah, can you please share your story about that?
Yeah, so in 2013 we went to Germany with my wife, and I was coaching there for less than a year. And then we came back to New Zealand, and that year I was doing my B license. I was enrolled to do the A license for later. And then I was supposed to be the technical advisor for the National Women's League squad. And then the head coach couldn't do it anymore because he was moving to Auckland. So pretty much I was offered to be the head coach. And yeah, I believe till today, not sure I was an Argentinian coaching at the National Women's League in New Zealand. So yeah, it was great to coach a team like that. When my first year, we have one player on the football ferns, and then almost 3 years later, we have 3 on the football ferns, 4 on the under 20, 2 on the under 17, 4 in the football ferns development squad. Talking to the head coaches from the national teams about the performance of the players, sending reports about how the players perform, having kind of conversation about what was its selections for next games or qualifying for the World Cup. And then, yeah, just having those conversations and filling the reports for the head coaches. I did apply as well at that time to be the assistant coach for the under 20. Unfortunately, I was not shortlisted for an interview, but definitely was a great moment of my coaching career. Still a few players from that team that still play for New Zealand, for the football fans. One of them, Paige Satchel, now she's playing here in Australia, in Sydney FC. So yeah, it was a great experience as a coach, as a person, and also sharing my knowledge with great players and great people.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and the last question from your experience, what is the differences between Australia and New Zealand from the football perspective?
Well, I guess we need to think about the size of the country and the population. So New Zealand only have 4.5 million. Australia got over 25 million. So that's already an advantage of having more people. Of course, immigration. New Zealand, especially in the last 20 years, did have, well, the last 10 years have 500,000 of immigration. So before it was 4 million. So it was beneficial. I think it's always beneficial, the immigration, especially when it's organized and planned. But in a way, also Australia have similar problems that New Zealand. For example, Aussie rules is #1 sport here, and rugby league in Queensland, and New Zealand, of course, rugby. So I think it's always hard to compete against sports that the people been playing for many, many years. Both Australians and Kiwis are really competitive. New Zealanders at the Olympic, for example, they did really well for the countryside they have and the budget they have. So when people think they are going to lose or they are underdogs, they step up. Same with the Australians. So in a way, okay, the Matildas did well at the last Olympic. Australia did have in that 2006 team that they just lost against Italy in the last minute for a penalty. That wasn't a penalty. They did have a great team in the 90s. They did have a great team as well. New Zealand 82 qualified to the World Cup, and they qualified to South Africa 2010. I think definitely Australia was moving to Oceania, from Oceania to Asia, since 2006, 6, 10, 14, 18, they've been at the World Cup. New Zealand only 2010. So I think the development of Australia is potentially a bit ahead, but I mean, at the end of the day, Australia in the last 10, 14, 18 didn't get out of the group. So the Kiwis could say that they are no better off than them. And we saw in the A-League recently with the Phoenix, Wellington Phoenix, they play in the A-League in Australia, competing. And so I think there are many similarities, plenty of potential, I would say, for both countries. Potentially, Australia have a bit of advantage because it's a bigger, have more money and bigger immigration or more people. So, but you never know. You cannot say that the Kiwis won't do it because, and recently, under 10, under 20, the Women's World Cup, New Zealand finished third. So it was our Olympics. They got a bronze medal. And that was the first time that a team from Oceania got that place in any major World Cup. Australia did well once in an under-20 World Cup. So I think they're in a similar space, but Australia keep developing, hosting major tournaments. I think that attention and the momentum will keep growing, and New Zealand need to keep up and need to keep competing, potentially move and play in Asia and don't play in Oceania anymore. But yeah, it's not my decision. But of course, I'm a Argentinian Kiwi, so I want the Kiwis to do well as well.
Okay. Yeah, so for me, yeah, that's all for the interview. Yeah, I get so many insights from you about Australian football and New Zealand also, because yeah, it's kind of interesting to know the football in the country that have a less popularity of football, like Australia, New Zealand. It's always interesting to know the football in that kind of countries. So yeah, I can only say thank you for your time. Yeah, thank you for your time. Thanks for. I'm really grateful to having you to talk a lot about Australian, football Australian, and I hope we can meet again in the other circumstances to talk about anything about football. And I'm really sorry, actually, a couple of days ago for the delay or schedule changes, because I have urgent activity to do that. I can't leave. I can't leave too. So it's my pleasure to meet you, Coach Juan, and see you in another time. And good night.
Yeah, good night. Thank you very much. Best regards. All the best for the people in Indonesia. I know there are difficult times, but we know that you have great people over there, great country. So stay together, stay positive. Definitely the good times are going to be back. And then, yeah, I've never been there yet. So definitely if I go to Indonesia, I will let you know, and we could catch up and talk about football and try your delicious food and visit your beautiful place.
Yeah, of course. Sure. Yeah. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. Stay safe.
Talk soon.